If World War III started, the first thing that would disappear is not cities, not armies, and not even lives. The first thing to disappear would be certainty. People would wake up expecting a normal day, but nothing would feel normal. Phones would buzz non-stop. News alerts, emergency messages, rumors spreading faster than facts. At first, no one would fully understand what is happening. Governments would use vague language, an escalating global situation, heightened military readiness, words designed to calm but doing the opposite. Within the first 24 hours, financial systems would react violently. Stock markets across the world would crash, not because bombs fell, but because confidence vanished. Trillions of dollars would disappear on screens in seconds. Banks would remain open, but people would rush to withdraw cash. Some governments would quietly limit withdrawals to prevent total collapse. Digital money would still exist, but trust in it would begin to fade. Airspace would be one of the first visible changes. Commercial flights would be canceled worldwide. Planes already in the air would be diverted or forced to land immediately. Millions of travelers would be stranded, confused, and afraid. Borders would close fast. Not slowly, not carefully, fast. Countries would prioritize control over cooperation. Citizens would be told to return home if possible. Many would not make it in time. Within days, global supply chains would break. Food does not come from supermarkets. Medicine does not appear by magic. Everything depends on transport, fuel, and stability. When those systems fail, shelves empty, not because there is no food on Earth, but because it cannot reach people. Fuel prices would skyrocket. Electricity could become unstable in some regions. Blackouts would begin, not from attacks, but from overload and fear. At the same time, a silent war would already be happening: cyber warfare. Power grids would be tested, hospitals would be targeted digitally, communication networks would experience unexplained failures. No explosions, no smoke, just darkness. People would realize that modern civilization is fragile, more fragile than anyone ever imagined. Social media would become a battlefield. Fake videos, fake speeches, fake attacks. Truth would be harder to find than safety. Fear would spread faster than any army ever could. Governments would introduce emergency measures, curfews, increased surveillance, restrictions on movement. All temporary, they would say, all necessary. Most people would not fight in this war, but their lives would be reshaped by it completely. Children would stop going to school, businesses would shut down, normal life would quietly disappear. And this is only the beginning, because World War III would not be one event, it would be a process, a slow collapse of the systems that keep the world running. As weeks passed, the world would enter a new phase, the phase where waiting ends and action begins. Diplomacy would continue on television, but behind the scenes, armies would be moving. Not loudly, not dramatically, but constantly. Troops would be repositioned, naval fleets would change routes, military bases would enter full alert status. For the public, this would feel like living inside a pressure chamber. Nothing explodes yet, but everyone knows something is coming. Eventually, the first direct military strikes would occur. Not massive invasions, precision attacks. Military facilities, radar systems, communication hubs. Governments would call them defensive actions, but once weapons are used openly, the war becomes real. Cities would not be attacked immediately. At first, the goal would be control, not destruction. But civilians would still feel it. Sirens would return to modern life. Emergency broadcasts would interrupt normal programming. Shelters that people forgot even existed would be reopened. Some regions would experience limited fighting. Others would live in constant fear without a single shot fired nearby. Psychological stress would become universal. At this stage, the internet would no longer feel free. Governments would control information more aggressively. Certain websites would disappear. Certain words would become dangerous. People would start to self-censor, not because they are forced to, but because they are afraid. As the war expands, energy becomes a weapon. Oil routes disrupted, gas supplies cut, electricity shortages spread. Cold regions suffer first, then hot regions. Modern cities are not built for long-term scarcity. Hospitals would face impossible choices: limited power, limited medicine, too many patients. Doctors and nurses would work until exhaustion. Some facilities would shut down entirely. Meanwhile, weapons technology would dominate the battlefield. Drones would fill the skies. Autonomous systems would make decisions faster than humans can react. War would become less human and more efficient. And with that efficiency comes danger. Mistakes would happen. False alarms, misidentified targets. One error could escalate everything. This is when nuclear weapons enter the conversation seriously, not as threats, but as plans. Governments would publicly deny intentions. Privately, scenarios would be prepared. Citizens would feel it, that constant question in the back of the mind: is today the day? Children would ask questions parents cannot answer. People would stop planning for the future. No vacations, no long-term dreams, just survival. Refugee movements would intensify. Borders would harden. Some countries would accept no one. Camps would grow into cities of desperation. Food shortages would become common. Disease would spread easily. At this point, World War III would no longer feel like a conflict between governments. It would feel like a global collapse. Trust between nations would be gone. Trust within societies would weaken. People would change. Some become kinder. Others become ruthless. History shows this pattern clearly. And still, the war would not be over, because the most dangerous moment is yet to come. The moment when someone decides losing is worse than destroying everything. At some point, the unthinkable would become possible, not because leaders want it, but because systems fail, because fear overrides logic, because someone believes there is nothing left to lose. The first nuclear strike would not look like the movies. No dramatic countdown, no global announcement, just a sudden flash, brighter than the sun, hotter than anything humans have ever created. In less than a second, an entire city section would vanish. Buildings collapse, streets melt. People closest to the blast would not feel pain. They would simply cease to exist. Those farther away would face a different fate: severe burns, blindness, radiation sickness that begins silently. Hospitals would be overwhelmed instantly. Most would be destroyed or without power. Doctors and nurses would have no resources, no medicine, and no answers. Within minutes, shock waves would shatter windows miles away. Cars would be flipped. Infrastructure would fail completely. And then comes the fallout. Radioactive particles would rise into the atmosphere and fall back to Earth over hours and days. Wind would carry death far beyond the target. Cities untouched by explosions would still become unlivable. Governments would order people to stay indoors, but many would have nowhere safe to hide. Panic would reach a level never seen before. This is the moment when World War III truly becomes global. Retaliation would follow, not immediately, but inevitably. Each side would believe they are responding, not attacking. Each strike would justify the next. Multiple detonations, different regions, different times. The planet would begin to change. Smoke and ash would block sunlight. Temperatures would drop. Crops would fail across continents. This is what scientists call a nuclear winter. Not total extinction, but a slow starvation. Food production would collapse. Global trade would be impossible. Billions would face hunger within months. Governments would lose control. Some would collapse entirely. Others would become extreme, authoritarian, focused only on survival. Money would lose meaning. Technology would degrade. Modern life would no longer exist as we know it. Survivors would adapt. Small communities, local food, limited electricity. Knowledge would become precious. Doctors, engineers, farmers. Children born after the war would grow up in a different world. a quieter world, a harsher world. The sky would look different. Cities would remain as ruins. Radiation zones would be avoided like forbidden lands. And eventually, decades later, the Earth would begin to heal. Nature always does, but humanity would be changed forever. World War III would not end with a victory. It would end with a lesson that the greatest threat to humanity was never weapons, but our inability to stop before it was too late.